Welcome back to the channel. In this game, we see Nigel Short take on Igor Ivanov, a Canadian grandmaster who defected from the Soviet Union in 1980. This was played in the Brighton International Tournament in 1983, round 8. Nigel had been doing well up to this point with 5 out of 7. The game started with a Sicilian defence. And once again the Richter-Rauzer variation. Up to now, this has all been played before and is all standard theory. Nigel deviates slightly, supporting the E pawn in the centre. Black develops. And white starts to gang up on the D pawn, which becomes a theme throughout the game. Kicking the bishop. And black finally castles. Here Ivanov plays rook to d7, looking to double the rooks. Perhaps knight to d7 would have been better with a view to playing knight to c5 or knight to e5. Nigel looks to centralise his knight now. And black brings his last piece into the game. Here Nigel decides to swap off the knight for the bishop. And brings another piece to attack the weak D pawn, which black defends. Centralising the king. Lots of slow manoeuvring in order to prepare breaks. Here Ivanov decides to try and facilitate the a4 push, which Nigel could quite simply stop with a4 himself, leading to a good position for white, as shown. And white has a slight advantage here, with still pressure against the D pawn. And a nice position. Although Nigel decides to play rook to d4. Which is immediately tried to be kicked by the bishop, but this does allow the D pawn to be taken and results in multiple exchanges on the d6 square. Whether white would actually want this, but is debatable, because it simplifies the position. Here black decides to push on the queen side with b4, which in hindsight would have been better to try and block up the centre maybe and chase the black rook away with bishop to e5. And this variation might have occurred where black is still slightly worse, but it has much more activity for his pieces. Instead he decided to play b4. Nigel took with the correct pawn, and a4 gives him a pass pawn, which, as we'll see in the game, becomes the game winner. Kicking the rook and taking the h-pawn. Nigel decides to push the a-pawn, and black decides to immediately try and threaten it. Again, a better option may have been to try and centralise the bishop and bringing the king across. May have been more playable for black. He played rook to b5, allowing Nigel to continue to push the pawn. And the bishop now defends the pawn, allowing the rook to try and shepherd it across. Attacking the b-pawn. Here the bishop retreats, and potentially maybe king to c8 would have been better. But I think at this stage black's position is quite bad in view of the a-pawn. So Nigel decides to collect the b-pawn. And here black makes his final mistake, allowing Nigel a brilliant tactical shot which wins the game outright. Bishop to b5. And in this position black resigned. If the rook takes the bishop, then black simply exchanges everything and a7 will queen. And the same as if the king decides to go to d6, a7, and he can't stop the a-pawn. A very good game from Nigel, who moved to 6 out of 8 and was doing very, very well in the tournament, and only 1 point away from achieving his last Grandmaster norm, which we'll see the outcome of that in the next game. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. Until next time, bye.